And I'm here with,
Joe.
hi, Joe. I'm Christy. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And do you understand how important this is?
Yes.
How long have you known Len?
Oh, since he was about 7 years old. So that's probably close to 40 years.
Yeah. I was told you used to spend most of your free time at Len's home.
Yeah.
I'm going to start straight to the point. Everyone wants to know, were you there when Mark Zuckerberg was here at Len's house?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What was he driving the first time he visited?
Could have been a silver thing.
He had a friend with him. Do you remember his name?
No.
Why was he there?
He was buying uh, parts out of the camper so we could put them into his bus. And the bus into a traveling camper.
He came back and stayed at the holiday weekend. Do you remember when that was?
Vaguely either, yeah.
Is all the truth Mark Zuckerberg learned of the internet business plan Len created to help his paralyzed friend, Tiffany? Then Mark Zuckerberg offered to do the code and help Len find investors.
Yes.
Mark Zuckerberg then decided since he was going to do the code and found investors, he should use business plan Len created and started the business.
Yeah.
He promised Len that if he let him to use it, he would see in return.
Yes, he did.
So he basically told him that going on with this plan that he would also be invested and get something too.
Yeah.
You were asked by Len to be a witness to the business deal.
Yeah.
And Mark Zuckerberg had Haustein, the lawyer, also on the phone as a witness. That was also to do the legal work and putting it in writing for Len to sign.
Yes.
Do you remember the business agreement? What Mark Zuckerberg was to give in return for using Len's original work and his business plan, his ideal?
Mm, a little bit about it.
Yeah. It was at least a 15% return. Mark Zuckerberg also had to donate to free clinic shelters and help fund a cure for muscular diseases. If Mark Zuckerberg didn't do that, then he owed 20% and Len would donate to them. It was 15 cents or 20 cents on every dollar made using the plan, the entire involvement around helping Tiffany. Len hoped that his friend would walk. Did Mark Zuckerberg steal the business plan from Len to create Facebook?
I hope so, yeah.
During the battle of Facebook ownerships, the lawyer Haustein called representing Mark Zuckerberg asking for a statement that Len gave the business plan and intellectual rights to Mark Zuckerberg. You sat at the kitchen table with his mom, Janet, and listened to the call.
Yes, I was like,
Did they threaten Lynn they would cause him trouble and make it up if he came forward or tried to seek return?
yes,
Did they also say they would make it look like Mark Zuckerberg worked involvement into Lynn's original work if he refused to give a statement?
mm,
During that call, did they argue with Lynn to get him to say something out of context, planning to use it commit fraud?
yeah,
Mark Allison. Yeah, my name is Janet McBurney. You had called my home back in, I think, 2006, asking for a statement from my son over the ownership of Facebook. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You called my son, Len Shakespeare, during the court battle over Facebook ownership, asking for my son to give his statement that he gave a business plan and intellectual rights to Mark Zuckerberg that he used to create Facebook.
I do know who that is, sure.
Okay. I need a statement from you and a copy of the call log.
No. So I don't know why you're calling me. I was 10 years ago.
You coached Mark to get that agreement. Then you helped Mark steal the rights to my son's work and a percentage for using it. Then you threatened him to never come forward or seek a return.
I did something.
Yes, you did. But now my son has muscular dystrophy and his health is bad. He figures he doesn't have anything to lose now.
I have nothing to do with it anymore.
But do you remember it? Do you have any comment?
Well, I don't have anything to do with that company. Well, I can't help you because I don't work there. I haven't been there in 10 years. Nothing to do with it. Well, I'm sorry I can't really help you. I would recommend you call the company because I don't work there anymore, and do.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
My name is Janet McBurney. I'm from Central City, Iowa. And I know Mark Zuckerberg was here. I seen him, I heard him talking and making an agreement. The lawyer was on the phone. He said he would make up the agreement. They all discussed what it should be. The lawyer was going to make it, mail it to Lynn, and he'd sign it. But the lawyer and Mark decided, we don't want Lynn in there. Let's get him out of there. So they took over and they screwed him. If you really want to know the truth, Mark Zuckerberg and Mark
Howitson.
Howison are thieves. There's no other way to put it but thieves. They don't deserve anything, and I hope it comes around and bites them right in the ass. I am Janet McBurney from Central City, Iowa. I am Lynn Shakespeare's mother. I remember what happened just like it was yesterday. Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan were at our home on a holiday weekend with their bus and the dog. And they were buying parts for the bus to turn it into a schoolie for school. And Mark wanted to know where he could go buy beer.
I remember that. I told him no. And he said one way or another he was going to get anything he wanted. Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg was at our home when he learned of an internet social business plan that my son had been working on for 10 years. He had been trying to get it online. It was supposed to be for his paralyzed friend so she could socialize with people, to have more options, to bring the world to her and help other people like her. Run free clinics, shelters, and help find a cure for neuromuscular diseases so she could walk again. That was really a very good thing Lynn was trying to do because it would help so many people. But Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Hollowitson had other ideas. The lawyer told Mark to offer Lynn a return percentage for using his intellectual work and to start the business himself. But then Mark decided the percentage was too high, so then he asked Lynn if he could have the rights to Lynn's intellectual work. Lynn said no. Then Mark went into a rage and said to Lynn, "I am not giving you a copy of the agreement." And then he went around destroying a bunch of things, trying to get rid of the evidence. Before Mark left, he stole Lynn's intellectual works. He would not return a phone call or an email. The next time we heard from Mark was during the battle of the Facebook. The lawyer called wanting Lynn to give a statement that he give his intellectual rights to Mark. And Lynn refused. Then they tried to get him to say something out of context and recorded him. And the lawyer said, "We got it." And they told Lynn they were going to create a new creation history. And they threatened Lynn never to come forward or they would cause trouble even if they made it up. There was five people listening into that phone call, including a state trooper.
Here's a question that everybody wants to know before we start this. So you were at my home, and you got to my home before Mark Zuckerberg did on a holiday weekend.
Correct.
Okay. What was I doing when you arrived?
You were out by the camper van or something.
Oh
no, you were burning some paperwork.
And I was crying, wasn't I?
Yeah, you're crying like a little girl because you were pissed off because you had these ideas and concepts of things, and
I was trying to get
them in the you were throwing them in a burn barrel, burning them.
And I said I had to get
burn barrel.
And I said I had to get this one to work, the one most important one. Yep.
Yeah.
It was help my friend. It was to help my friend Tiffany.
So basically, it could, video talk like we are now, kind of, and
it was a
show what you've been doing.
It was
what you've been doing.
Online business where everybody socialized, and then I used experiences from friends and family to create it. Like my sister worked at a marketing research firm, and I figured out a way to do all the marketing research from the actual postings that people talk about their everyday life and their hobbies, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were here when Mark was here.
For a little while, yeah.
Yeah, you left and something happened. I think that's when you had a problem with the local authorities and your car had it. Is that what happened? Was that weekend? You came down here to see the stripper?
Oh, Angelique, yeah.
Yeah, your car got. You can say it.
fucked up.
So the authorities took your car and they stripped it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you stayed here. So you stayed here at my home at night. Okay.
Yeah.
So you. Okay. So you got to see Mark Zuckerberg while he was here, but that night that you spent the night, I told you I think it's all going to work out because he was going to help me.
Yeah. What did I say?
Don't trust anybody.
Get it. And get it what?
And get it in
Get
writing.
It in.
Writing.
Yeah.
Okay. And
people fuck you over.
yeah, and he couldn't be trusted. Okay. So then his story changed, or his plans changed, and this lawyer got involved, Mark Howitson. And then Mark decided that he wanted to use my plan, and he offered to pay me a percentage, and Mark Howitson, that lawyer, was the one was helping him work out the business agreement. And then Joe, you know Joe.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Joe, while on his work break, was here, and he was a witness during a business agreement between me and Mark Zuckerberg that also went by Marcel Elliott Zuckerberg. Okay. And the lawyer, Howitson, that was his friend and mentor, was his witness over the phone. Mark was supposed to record it and give me this copy, but he never did. Correct?
And I remember because I left to go to Cedar Rapids to visit other people.
Yeah.
And then I went to where the fucking prison is.
Anamosa?
The JMP Psych.
Yeah,
I went to
Anamosa.
Anamosa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went there because I had a couple friends in Anamosa. That Heidi chick, I went to see her and a couple other people, and then I came back that night, and you were telling me about it.
Okay. So then, Mark refused to give me a copy of the video that he did of the agreement, but I was still under the impression that the lawyer was going to give me the agreement in writing. That's why he was on the phone. But
Correct.
before Mark left, hold on, let's back up. But after that recording, Mark asked me to give him my intellectual rights to my work, which would have canceled out the business agreement, and I refused to. And that's when he said he wouldn't give me a copy of the recording. And after that, he went around trying to destroy everything that would have been proof that he was here. He formatted a digital camera. He opened up the back on a film camera. One camera came up missing, and then when we left, just before he left, he was using one of our cameras to take a picture of all of us at the end of the driveway next to a lilac bush, the family members. But after he left, we found out he stole everything. And I couldn't contact him. He wouldn't answer his email. I had his dad's email too, and he wouldn't answer that. He wouldn't answer a phone call. Okay, so that was pretty much the end of that. Okay, but then you were here again, and I think it was 2006. You were here again when the lawyer called. You were here again, but you got here.
Yeah, I was, but I think it was in 2007 because didn't I bring Grayson down?
No, you didn't have Grayson with you. No.
So, all right. So I came down before Grayson, and then, no, it was 2008 I brought Grayson down.
Okay. So, the lawyer had called, wanting me to give a statement that I gave that business plan to Mark Zuckerberg. And I said that if I did, I might see a return.
Something.
Right. And I said, now wait a minute now, we had an agreement, and that lawyer, which was on the phone, I said, and you were supposed to get this in writing and bring it back for me to sign. Now all of a sudden you don't want to do that. Now you want me to give a statement that I gave it to Mark. I said I refuse to give him my intellectual rights over to him. So we had an argument, okay? And when that happened, you weren't here during the phone call. Joe was here,
No,
Mom was here. They were listening to it on the phone. The lawyer had actually called twice. He called once and I wasn't home, then he called the second time. I got it out at the barn, and there was Jim Smith and his relative. Jim Smith is an Iowa State Trooper. Now, Jim Smith now has passed away. He died while on duty. Okay? So they listened into this phone call. Huh?
Wasn't he the one that was buying bike parts?
No. They were here buying video cameras. VHS video cameras. Remember the old VHS video camera that I got from you?
Yeah.
They bought that for me. And then his relative was going to school to become a movie producer.
Okay.
Okay? They listened into the phone call. And his relative said that he knew Mark through a friend. So he was really surprised all this was going on. Okay. So you came... Okay, hold on a second. So during the phone call, I revealed to Mark that there was a recording that I did of him on a little mini tape, little mini cassette. And he got all upset and he wanted that cassette. And he says, well, if you give me that cassette, I'll see about maybe giving you something. Well, then we argued and argued and argued. They tried to get me to say something out of context. And eventually they got me to say something out of context, and the lawyer says, oh, we got it. And then I heard a bunch of voices say, hang up the phone. And then at the very end, Mark says, well, you still might see something. And then he hung it up. You came back to my home that evening because you stayed here again. And I was really upset. I was in the barn trying to find that tape.
Yeah.
And you took a tape and you said, maybe you ought to just forget it. And you took a lighter and you started melting one of my little mini cassettes.
Yeah, I remember.
And I still have that cassette yet. Okay. So this is what they've been trying to hide. Now this is what is so important. I tried to get the FBI to answer an email, get past their call center. I sent them mail. They wouldn't answer a damn thing. Okay? Back in 2003, that's way before, when he ripped me off, first I called the authorities. They said, well, you know what? They stole your intellectual work. There ain't nothing we can do about that. So I contacted lawyers, and the lawyer said, well, you ain't going to be able to do anything until he uses your intellectual work. Well, here we go. He used my intellectual work to create Facebook. Okay?
Yep.
Now, so here's the problem. I tried to come forward. If the FBI would have answered an email, a phone call, or got past their call center, they would have known that Mark Zuckerberg and that lawyer created massive fraud to win the ownership of Facebook. Now, if they would have answered that, then that means that those two would have been in jail or prison, right? And here's how it would have played out. Severin, that was here the first time with Mark, because Mark was here twice. First he was with the little car, with his best friend in college. That was Severin. Severin put $15,000 towards creating that online site. Not Mark. Yep. Severin did. Severin paid for everything. If the FBI would have answered those emails, phone call, got past the call center, mail, the whole darn bit, Mark would have had a choice. He would have either had to pay me, right? He would have had to pay me, and I would have helped him, so I wouldn't be sitting broke right now. Or I would have worked with Severin. If Severin would have gave me a percentage in return, I would have worked with Severin, and most likely Severin would be the owner of Facebook.
All right, let me ask you this. You know all these creators of the social media. It wasn't You didn't have a name for it. It wasn't called Facebook. It was
No,
a social media
I wanted to call it my journey. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I want to know
Hmm.
how you know all these creators. How do you know how much money did they put in? How do you know all this? If you weren't involved in it,
Okay.
how would you know this? And the other thing, which
There was
I
interviews
saw,
done. That's how I know how much money Severin put in, because there was interviews done.
and this is the other thing I want to know.
Okay.
I have Facebook.
Yeah.
All right. You have Facebook.
Yeah.
Why is your Facebook totally different than mine?
Well, there's an interesting thing to that. And I really didn't know that this is what was going on. Anybody that was involved in the creation of Facebook, including adding money to it, one of them, either Mark or Severin, and I'm going to lead more towards it was probably Severin, got a special version of Facebook. So when you went to sign on, you didn't get the same Facebook that everybody else got. You got a special slot that was reserved. And I heard that there was like 15 slots available. Could have been slightly more or slightly less. So when I first signed up for Facebook, now when you first sign up for Facebook, Facebook was really buggy. Okay? But when I went to first go sign up to Facebook, it took me to somewhere else, and it downloaded a different version that everybody else has. Now there is multiple versions of Facebook. I don't know how many different versions there are, but I mean it kept evolving again and again and again and again and again. But the special version of Facebook has a number at the top of it so you can know what your slot is.
Oh yeah, I've seen it on yours.
Yeah, and it's really low, isn't it? And
like number 8, like
nine,
8 or something.
9. And the special
9.
versions are full screen. The icons are hidden. No advertising. And no advertising.
I've looked at your Facebook. And like with my Facebook, when there's a new version out, it updates.
Mine don't.
Yours does not. Does not update.
Mine stays just as it is.
Ever.
Yep.
And it's totally different than.
It did try to update once, and it reverted right back to the original. Yep.
Yeah. That I find perplexing.
Yep. Okay, so there's that. So so for anybody that doesn't know, I'm gonna go over a little bit of history here towards the end of this, but we ain't gonna go through everything. But so the whole reason of creating this social network, this online business, was a promise. Well, it started with a promise.
Yeah, it was for your friend who.
My friend was paralyzed. Yeah.
Yeah, she's disabled.
Okay.
Can't get out.
She was disabled.
I know that.
So it was to get past barriers. When she came back from after having meningitis and she was paralyzed and she was hanging on to me and hanging on, I prayed a promise to her that I tried to make the world a better place, and it was all because of her. And you know what? And if it wasn't for Mark being such a greedy, spoiled brat, it all would have worked. It would have employed people that couldn't get a job because of disabilities. It was to fund free clinics and shelters, which is interesting because his girlfriend that he had only known for just a short time was at my home, and she thought that was the greatest idea. Which, when they created the Chan initiative, I thought, hey, at least they're going to do that, but it didn't turn out, did it?
No.
So it all would have worked out if it wasn't for Mark. But now it's become this bloated up thing that doesn't resemble what it originally was supposed to do, and he's spying on everybody to become this big thug.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Did you see the video that Mark Howitson, Mark Zuckerberg's attorney, did after the Facebook battle hearing? It's very interesting. His answers are based on the fraud that they created. And I'm here to tell you the truth. Let me introduce myself. My name is Lynn Shakespeare from Central City, Iowa. Mark Zuckerberg never created the intellectual work that was used to create Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg's creation history is hiding a lot. And he took advantage of a very bad situation. And everybody should take notice of this. You should be getting me on the front page news. You should be getting me on TV while you can. And I'll tell you why everybody should be interested. Mark Zuckerberg got in trouble at Harvard. Everybody knows that. But what happened after that was he got into an argument with his dad. His dad told him he needed to figure out a way to make ends meet. Mark had an idea of buying a school bus and turning it into a schoolie and going to school at Iowa State in Iowa. While Mark Zuckerberg was getting ready to take classes at Iowa State, he had Eduardo Severin with him. The two of them drove to my home in Central City, Iowa, where Mark looked to see what I had to turn his school bus that he had just bought into a schoolie that he was going to live in at Iowa State, do videos of the experience, and put them online hoping to generate a profit. While he was at my home, he learned of the intellectual work that I worked on for 10 years. I started working on it since the beginning of the World Wide Web was available to the public. Now, that intellectual work that I worked on for 10 years, I started working on it because a female friend that was just getting ready to start college became paralyzed after contracting spinal meningitis. That intellectual work was to create a social site. That social site was to bring the world closer to her, for she would have more options, for she could have a constant contact between friends and family, the outside world. She could meet new people. She could have more options. When I worked on that intellectual work, I used experiences from friends and family. My sister worked for a marketing and research company. From her, I was able to figure out a way of collecting the research that you would normally collect on phone surveys and do it in the background with keywords. Another friend, my ex-girlfriend, she did advertising and design. I figured advertising and design could be sold. There was another way the money could be made from the site. But here's what happened. And this is why everybody needs to really take notice. This is one of the reasons why everybody needs to take a very serious notice about what happened. There's a 9/11 connection to Facebook through me. And here's how. In May of 2000, let's see, and here's how. I was doing security for a company that melted down currency for the federal mint. I left that job to get that internet site started. Now that was well before the 10 years. And I took a job at the local landfill where I witnessed a 9/11 pre-event involving 2 of the future terrorists, 1 co-conspirator that was a double agent working for our government, and 1 FBI agent, where they were having a disagreement. The co-conspirator was under the impression that the co-conspirator was getting the terrorists in position, getting them ready. And he was under the impression that in the end, he was going to have a full-time job with the Central Intelligence Agency. But that's not what was going to happen. He learned that in the end, he was going to be the fall guy. So he tried to whistleblow about what was going to happen on 9/11. Now that happened in May of 2000. He brought into my building a container, and in that container had the plans of 9/11. A binder with government papers. I had to look at those papers and see all of the government officials that were involved in that planning. He brought in textbooks from the flight school. He brought in a piece from every place they had been. And it was very surprising, all the places that he had been connected to the government. An FBI agent seen what had happened, and he had ordered me to destroy that evidence. But the FBI wouldn't take it, they wouldn't touch it, because if they did, according to their rule, they'd have to accept that it existed. I refused to do that, and I was threatened with treason. They said they may kill my family and my friends and my co-workers, anybody they had to keep that secret. And in that conversation, I heard, I need to learn my place. That was not my first time dealing with the shadow government and the consortium group. I became a monitored witness after that. Now this is interesting because Mark Zuckerberg was at my home in 2003. This is when the war started. This is when the committee hearings were going on. 9/11 had already happened. But they wanted me to stay quiet. They monitored everything that came into my home. Anybody that visited, any phone calls going in and out, and my internet, and slowing it down to a creeping pace that a 1.3 megapixel picture took 5 hours to upload. There is no way that I could get that internet site online, and I needed to. Because my friend that was paralyzed left with her family to Seattle, Washington. And before that, we talked every day. And she needed to keep in contact with her other friends here in Iowa. I let Mark Zuckerberg stay at my home, thinking that I could make a little bit of money, and it just might piss off the Central Intelligence Agency and the FBI because there was somebody staying in my home from New York. While Mark was staying at my home, I learned that he was in the same hacking club as one of my friends. And he was one of those experiences I used to create that intellectual work. I asked Mark if he could help me with the coding and help me get the site online. Mark Zuckerberg found me the investors I needed just overnight. But then a lawyer got involved. His name was Mark Howitson. He was 28 years old. Then Mark Howitson convinced Mark Zuckerberg, and if you guys don't know, Mark's real name is Marcel Elliott Zuckerberg, convinced him that he should offer me a return percentage and use my intellectual work, and then he'd become famous and wealthy. Since I already had all the intellectual work done. All the instructions to create it. All I needed was the investors and somebody to do the coding. I did not want to do that. I said the only way I would do that if the return was high enough. Now, in that intellectual work, my plan was to take funds from that site and fund free clinics, shelters, and help find a cure for neuromuscular diseases where my friend could walk again. And I had bad health at the time, but I didn't know what was wrong with me, other than I had a serious eye injury from where I worked. That lawyer, Mark Howitson, the one on that video that talks about what was true and what's not and based his answers on that fraud that they created, he's the one that worked out the deal with me to get Mark Zuckerberg to use my intellectual work. We had witnesses. We had a witness. He got off work. He came out here. The whole event was recorded with Mark Zuckerberg's new Sony CD camera. It was new for that year. Mark kept on telling me, you don't have to worry, Lynn, you don't have to worry. You can trust Mark Howitson. He's a really good guy. You don't have to worry, you got this. He says, I'm going to create it, and you're going to get your return, and everybody's going to be happy. Everything's all going to be good. You ain't got to worry. We did the agreement on video. Mark Howitson was also a witness over the phone that was supposed to get it in writing and return to me to sign, for both of us to sign, including the witnesses. Before the camera was shut off, Mark Zuckerberg asked me if I would say on camera, if I would give him my rights to my intellectual work, and I refused. And I said, if I understand this correctly, you want me to say I'm giving you the rights to my intellectual work for you can call it yours. Yes, he said. I don't want anybody to know that it was from you. And that means I gave it to you free and clear. And if I do that, you don't have to give me a return. I'm not going to do that. Mark Zuckerberg threw a fit. He got violent. He started going around and destroying every piece of evidence he could find, including the video that was done of the video agreement. He said that if I wouldn't give him a video recording saying that, then he wanted no proof that he was there, so he was going around and destroying what he could. He was I had used multiple cameras. He was going around and opening up the back of film cameras, formatting digital cameras. He did everything he could to try to cover his tracks. After I didn't agree to say that I gave him my work, my intellectual work, okay, after that, I went out with a tape recorder, and we talked for, well, until the entire mini tape recorder was filled up, talking about this idea. Now, before that, Mark had talked to me and recorded me as we were talking about it. But Mark couldn't figure out how to do it on his own. He needed my intellectual work. He couldn't figure it out. He wasn't smart enough. You ever hear people say that when he talks about Facebook, he really doesn't understand how it works? He just got it online and everybody else runs it. On the last day, Mark Zuckerberg asked me to talk to Priscilla while he was getting ready and not bother him. And Priscilla tried to occupy me, as Mark Zuckerberg didn't just go around and try to cover up his tracks. When he left, he stole my entire intellectual work. Now, in that notebook was in a portfolio. And in that notebook had other plans in it. Now, when he left my home, I tried to call his dad. His dad said, I never heard of him. I tried to call his lawyer. Couldn't get no answer. Everybody would avoid me. Mark went around with my notebook, flashing around. Look, he kept on saying, look, somebody gave me the plans for his social site. They gave it to him. Mark said he gave it to him. Somebody gave it to him. But I never gave it to him. He lied. Mark Zuckerberg got on Good Morning America. Every answer him and Subwern gave was bullshit. Every time I tried to get help, I couldn't. And you want to know why? The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Central Intelligence Agency and that shadow group of the government, the consortium group, knew that if I got on TV, there's a possibility it might reveal that they were involved in 9/11. Now, when they were here, there's proof that Mark was here. My phone's conversations were recorded. My internet was recorded. There was people out here with telescopes, big lenses and cameras watching us. There was a vehicle parked up here where they had the passenger side seat gone and a blazer, and a camera mounted to it on a remote watching us. The first day that Mark was here, there was 2 agents right next door where they're building a church, holding a parabolic dish, recording me talking to Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Howitson used that situation against me to steal that intellectual work. And it's looking like they helped Mark and Mark Howitson get by with that fraud. Well, they wouldn't help me. I tried to get involved in the Supreme Court case, and I was told nobody is ever going to know who I am unless I can come up with $1 million to blow. But the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice should have jumped on it and helped me. They should have figured out some way that they could have separated me being that witness and Mark ripping me off. But they were sure that if they did, if they didn't find out, if the public didn't find out through me, they would have found out through Mark. Want to know why? I was feeling so bad about that when Mark was here, I told him about what happened. He could see all these vehicles and all these FBI agents and the helicopter going over, the guy hanging out the camera watching us. So I told him. You know how much he owes me? The deal was 15% return on every dollar made from using that business plan. And then he had to donate to free clinics, shelters, and help find a cure for neuromuscular diseases. The Chan Initiative, I was under the impression that was going to wind up being them doing that. The free clinics, the shelters, and help find a cure for neuromuscular diseases. But it was all just a show. Remember in the beginning, Mark said, oh, I'm only going to take $1 a year, and the rest of it's going to go to a good cause. Never happened. So what happened if he didn't donate to those areas? If he didn't donate to free clinics, shelters, and help find a cure for neuromuscular diseases, then he owed me 20 cents on every dollar. Okay? 20 cents on every dollar. And that difference, that 5% difference, figure out how many billions of dollars that would have been. Those billions of dollars, plus probably some of the money that would have came from my percentage besides, because that's what I wanted to do, was going to go towards funding free clinics, shelters, and find a cure for neuromuscular diseases so my friend could walk again. But Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Howitson thought they were more important than helping the poor and the homeless. They thought they were more important. They don't give a damn about people with neuromuscular diseases. And Priscilla Chan, I really think that she went all along with this and she married Mark Zuckerberg just for a piece of the prize. So now what about me? Well, after that 9/11 bit, and I was totally against it and trying to whistleblow it, I've been pretty much blacklisted and abused by the government and left flat broke. I never did go back to work. And here's the real shitty part of this, besides being poor and getting ripped off by Mark Zuckerberg. My friend, she died waiting to use the site. If Mark would have done what he was supposed to, everything would have worked out fine. People would have been getting the help that they needed, the free clinics, the shelters. I wound up going on state-funded health care, where I was abused because the government was able to get at me. I almost died from a neurotoxin. My body was breaking down, and pink goo, which was the insides of me, was coming out, and they told me I'd be dead within an hour. With pure luck, somebody knew how to counteract it. Isn't that horrible? Now guess what? I now have Emery-Dreifuss muscular dystrophy, Sjogren's, Meniere's disease, and more. The Emery-Dreifuss muscular dystrophy takes my electrical system, my heart, makes my muscles break down. The Sjogren's makes the, I can't think of it. Anyway, it makes the organs inside you break down. I'm never going to be able to work again. And I'm absolutely broke. I have been trying to prove what happened. And they took that money they made off using my intellectual work, and Mark Howitson and Mark Zuckerberg's been acting like mobsters, and if they can't abuse people and force them to do what they do, they're paying them off. Signing agreements that they'll never reveal what happened. Do you remember? Now, here's an interesting thing to that. Mark Howitson and Mark Zuckerberg called me during the battle over Facebook. 5 witnesses to that call. They called twice on that day, demanding that I give a statement that I gave my intellectual work to Mark. So what Mark's been saying, he said he got that notebook for free with all those plans in it, was true. And I said, I did not tell you I would give you my intellectual work. He stole it. And I said to that lawyer, Mark Howitson, I said, you're the one that brokered that deal. That business agreement was recorded with witnesses, and you're one of those witnesses on the phone that was supposed to get it back to me in writing for both of us to sign. I said, you scammed me. You took advantage of a bad situation, and you guys are creating fraud. I was told by Mark Howitson himself and Marcel Elliott Zuckerberg, if I didn't go along and say that, then they were going to create a new creation history. A new one. That's what they did. They committed fraud and took it all the way to the Supreme Court. That lawyer needs to be in prison. And Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan, they need to have some serious charges against them too. But now Eduardo Severin, he's the one that fronted the money at the beginning. And I could see where he kept his mouth shut. They made him sign a non-disclosure agreement too after he took a percentage at the end on that corner, never to reveal the truth. That's why nobody's heard it. But during that conversation, when we were arguing back and forth, they got me to say something that they were going to use out of context to make it sound like I did give him my intellectual work. And that lawyer says, we got it. We don't need anybody anymore. Mark, hang up the phone. But there at the very end of the conversation, Mark Zuckerberg says to me, well, you might still see something in the end. And abruptly the phone call ended. I've had enough. I'm going to prove this one way or another. Get me on TV. Get me in the newspapers. Get me in this podcast to do an interview. Let's get this very clear here. How many people got an interest in 9/11? How many people have you ever known that was actually so close to it that they talked to the terrorists, talked to the co-conspirator that was a double agent, talked to the FBI, and was ordered to destroy the evidence and see the plans? I'm the only one. You need to take advantage of it while you can.